I'm Colette, 35, female. I live in a small but charming apartment above a bakery, the scent of fresh bread my constant companion. For the last decade, my life has been dedicated to the world of wine, working as the head sommelier at Verve, one of the city's most respected fine dining establishments. My world was one of balance, aroma, and finish, but that all changed when a man I trusted decided to systematically dismantle my career and reputation, all while smiling to my face. This is the story of how I used his own tactics against him, not with loud accusations, but with quiet, calculated precision. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My job was my passion. At Verve, I wasn't just a sommelier, I was a storyteller. Each bottle had a history, a terroir, a soul. I knew our cellar like the back of my hand, every vintage, every label. David, the owner, was a man who appreciated the finer things, or so I thought. He was charismatic, always impeccably dressed, and praised my work effusively. Colette, he'd often say during our staff meetings, "Your palate is the heart of this restaurant. You are irreplaceable." I believed him. Our professional relationship was built on mutual respect. He gave me complete autonomy over the wine program, from sourcing rare bottles at auction to curating the tasting menu pairings with our head chef. We were a well-oiled machine, and Verve was reaping the rewards, earning accolades and a loyal clientele who trusted my recommendations implicitly. Leo, our head bartender, was my closest friend at Verve. He was a quiet observer, a man who saw everything from behind the polished mahogany of his bar. He had been with David for 15 years, long before I arrived. The man's a shark, Leo once told me, polishing a glass until it gleamed. Loves the kill more than the meal. I dismissed it as cynicism at the time. I saw David as a driven businessman, nothing more. My days were filled with the pleasant rhythm of my work, training new staff like Sophie, our bright-eyed young waitress, meeting with vintners, and the quiet, meditative process of decanting a special bottle for a guest. Life felt stable, my career secure. I was respected, I was valued, and I was blissfully unaware of the storm gathering just beyond the horizon. I had built a reputation for excellence, for a gentle, knowledgeable approach that made the intimidating world of wine accessible. That reputation was everything to me. It was my life's work, poured into every glass. The first cracks appeared subtly. It started with whispers, faint and deniable, a comment here, a question there. Did Colette seem a little off her game last night? I overheard a server ask another. I brushed it aside. A bad night, perhaps. Then, a regular guest, someone I had served for years, questioned my pairing suggestion. David mentioned you might be getting a bit too experimental, Colette. Maybe we'll just stick to the house red. It was a small thing, but it stung. David had never expressed any such concern to me. When I approached him about it, he waved it away with a charming smile. "Oh, you know Mrs. Gable. She's just set in her ways. Don't worry about it. I have complete faith in you." But the incidents grew. A case of Premier Cru Chablis I had ordered went missing from the cellar, only to be found by David in a disorganized corner days later, implying I had misplaced it. He made a show of being relieved, clapping me on the shoulder in front of the staff. Had me worried for a second. "Colette, that's a $10,000 mistake." The staff exchanged glances. The seed of doubt was planted. Sophie, who once hung on my every word during training, started double, checking my inventory counts and asking questions that felt less like curiosity and more like interrogation. She'd mentioned that David had asked her to keep an eye on things in the cellar just to make sure everything was running smoothly. My authority was being subtly eroded, my competence questioned in 1,000 tiny ways. The harmony of Verve was turning dissonant, and I was the one who seemed out of tune. The breaking point came during our annual inventory audit. It was a painstaking process I had managed flawlessly for 7 years. This time, however, the numbers were wrong, dangerously wrong. The report showed a significant discrepancy, a shortfall of nearly $30,000 in our high-end inventory. I knew it was impossible. I checked the numbers 3 times, my hands growing colder with each calculation. David called an emergency meeting with the restaurant's accountant and me. He feigned grave concern, his brow furrowed. "Colette, I don't understand how this could happen. You are the only one with a key to the Grand Cru cellar." The implication was clear and horrifying. He was accusing me of theft. The accountant, a man loyal to David, looked at me with cold, appraising eyes. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I protested, my voice shaking. David, that's impossible. I haven't stolen anything. There must be a mistake in the records. He sighed, a performance of deep disappointment. I want to believe you, Colette. I really do. But the numbers don't lie, and lately, well, there have been concerns. He didn't need to elaborate. The missing Chablis, the supposed ordering mistakes. The whispers, it was all a carefully constructed narrative, and I was the villain. I left that meeting in a daze, the accusation hanging in the air like poison. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the restaurant after hours, using my key one last time. I needed to understand. As I stood in the silent, cool air of the cellar, I saw it. A security camera, small and black, tucked away in a corner I never looked at. It was new, and I had a sickening feeling I knew what it had been installed to prove. My shock quickly hardened into cold resolve. I was being framed, and I needed to know why. I called Leo the next morning, my voice low and urgent. We met at a small cafe far from the restaurant. I laid out everything. The whispers, the missing wine, the audit, the camera. He listened patiently, his expression grim. I told you he was a shark, Colette. He said softly, he's getting ready to sell Verve, been in talks with a big restaurant group for months. Suddenly, it all made sense. A $30,000 hole in the inventory, I said, the pieces clicking into place that would lower the sale price. He could claim the business was less profitable than it appeared on the books. Leo nodded. Exactly. He avoids a higher tax bill on the sale, and the buyers think they got a deal, but he needs a scapegoat, someone to blame for the loss. I was that scapegoat, a trusted, high-level employee whose theft and mismanagement would be the perfect cover story. He wasn't just firing me, he was destroying my reputation to save himself money. The betrayal was so deep, so cynical, it took my breath away. But with Leo's confirmation, my fear was replaced by a quiet, burning anger. I wasn't going to let him ruin me. David had underestimated me. He thought I was just a quiet gentlewoman who knew her wines. He didn't realize that a good sommelier is, above all, an expert in observation, patience, and strategy. I spent the next 2 weeks in a blur of activity. I contacted a friend who was a forensic accountant and another who specialized in digital security. While I continued to work at Verve, projecting an image of someone worried and beaten down, my team was quietly working in the background. Kindness was my weapon. Silence was my plan. My forensic accountant friend found the first thread. David had been creating fake invoices from a shell company, a wine distributor that didn't exist. He would purchase. Hi, and wines for the restaurant. Pay the invoice from Verve's account into his own shell account, and then the wine would never appear. That was the source of the inventory discrepancy. He wasn't just avoiding taxes, he was actively embezzling from his own company before the sale. Meanwhile, my digital security expert gained access to the restaurant's server, and there it was, emails between David and his personal lawyer outlining the entire scheme. They discussed the plan to undervalue the business, the need for a fall guy, and even mentioned me by name as the perfect, unsuspecting candidate. The most damning piece of evidence, however, came from Leo. He remembered that David had recently upgraded the security system. The new camera in the cellar was part of a cloud-based system that David could access from his phone. What David didn't know was that the installer was Leo's cousin. A quick cash-in-hand favor later, we had access to the full, unedited cloud footage. The files showed David himself, late at night, entering the cellar with a box and removing several cases of the most expensive wines. He wasn't just creating a paper trail of theft. He was physically stealing the inventory to furnish his own private collection before the restaurant changed hands. He was framing me for a crime he was literally committing himself. I had the fake invoices, the emails, and the video evidence. I had everything. All the components were ready. It was time to let the truth breathe. The day of the final sale meeting arrived. David had invited the board of the restaurant group to Verve for a celebratory dinner to sign the final papers. He was practically glowing with smug self-satisfaction. He had already fired me that morning, a quiet affair in his office. I'm sorry it had to come to this, Colette. He'd said, his voice dripping with false sympathy, I've given you a generous severance, and in return, I expect your discretion. He thought he had one. He didn't know I was sitting in a car across the street waiting. As the main course was being served to the executives, I made my entrance. I walked into the private dining room, calm and composed. David's face went white. Colette, what are you doing here? I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I smiled gently. I don't think so, David. I turned to the CEO of the restaurant group, a formidable woman named Ms. Albright. Ma'am, my name is Colette. For the last 7 years, I have been the head sommelier here. I was fired this morning for supposedly stealing $30,000 worth of wine. I placed a slim portfolio on the polished table. Inside, you will find copies of fraudulent invoices created by David, emails discussing his plan to frame me to devalue the business for this sale, and a link to a video file. As I spoke, I saw David subtly reach for his phone under the table. "Don't bother, David," I said, my voice still quiet. "The video of you removing the wine from the cellar has already been sent to everyone at this table, as well as to the IRS and the State Liquor Authority. I believe they will be very interested in your accounting practices." The room was utterly silent. Ms. Albright opened the portfolio, her expression turning to stone as she read. David just sat there, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He had been so sure of his victory, he never saw the quiet sommelier coming. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The deal was, of course, dead on arrival. Ms. Albright and her team walked out of the restaurant without another word. The next day, Verve was closed, pending multiple investigations. David was facing charges for embezzlement, tax fraud, and more. His reputation, unlike mine, was shattered beyond repair. He lost everything: the restaurant, his money, his standing in the community. He tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The quiet plan had worked perfectly. A few weeks later, I received a call from Ms. Albright. She was impressed by my thoroughness and integrity. "You're a woman who protects her house," she said. "I respect that." The restaurant group she represented had pulled out of the Verve deal, but they were opening a new flagship restaurant in the city. She offered me the position of director of wine for her entire national restaurant group, a job with more responsibility and creative freedom than I could have ever imagined. I accepted. I brought Leo with me, making him the head of the beverage program for the new flagship. We built a new team, founded on the principles of trust and respect that David had so callously discarded. I never had to raise my voice. I never had to cause a scene. I simply gathered the truth and served it at the perfect moment, chilled and undeniable. My name was cleared, my career was stronger than ever, and David was a fading, bitter memory. Sometimes the most powerful statements are made in silence.